The pharmaceutical space, wow, it's moving at light speed. And if you're watching the biosimilars market, the safety monitoring piece, pharmacovigilance, PV, that's evolving even faster.
It really is.
So today we're doing a deep dive into the, let's say, strategic checklist PV teams really need to get right to ensure patient safety and, well, keep up with that market growth.
That's absolutely right. When you look at the complexity of these biologics, the old ways of doing PV, they often fall a bit short.
Right.
So our mission here in this deep dive is really to pull out and clarify those strategic must-dos for biosimilar safety heading into 2025. We want to detail the key operational steps PV teams are taking or should be taking to manage risk well in this, specialized and frankly booming sector.
Okay. Welcome to DD Red Knowledge Capsule. Let's start unpacking that, maybe with the sheer pace of expansion. Our sources really highlight why this is suddenly such a top-level strategic issue.
Exactly. The market size is, well, it's staggering, and that speed dictates the urgency. The biosimilar market is predicted to more than double in just the next 5 years.
More than double.
Yeah, jumping from around, USD 42 billion now to over USD 97 billion by 2030. It's huge.
That's massive growth. Just massive.
And, if you look globally, Europe's kind of leading the pack right now, holding about 37% of the market share.
Okay.
So when you have that level of money pouring in, plus patients adopting these therapies quickly, safety management just shifts. It's not just a compliance box to tick anymore.
Yeah.
It becomes a fundamental strategic pillar. You simply can't have sustainable success without really rigorous safety protocols in place.
So if the market's exploding like that, this safety checklist must be pretty specialized. What's the sort of fundamental difference in monitoring safety when you move from a, let's say, traditional small molecule drug to these big, complex biologics or biosimilars?
Well, it really boils down to the inherent variability of biologics themselves.
Variability. Okay.
Yeah. While, biosimilar PV still needs all the basic adverse event reporting, it absolutely has to prioritize these complex biological factors that just, well, they don't exist in the same way with traditional drugs.
Right.
And the cornerstone, really the foundation of that specialized approach, is the risk management plan, the RMP.
Okay, hold on a sec. Doesn't the original biologic, the reference product, doesn't it already have a really detailed RMP? Isn't it kind of doubling the work if you need the biosimilar company to create its own from scratch?
That's a really critical question, and it gets right to the heart of the strategy. You see, while the biosimilar has to prove it's highly similar, it's not identical.
Not identical, okay.
Especially when you consider potential differences in, say, impurities or the nuances of the manufacturing process. So because of that, you absolutely need your own unique RMP for the biosimilar.
So why the unique RMP then? What's the specific focus?
It has to explicitly focus on risks that might be unique to that specific biosimilar's manufacturing or potential interactions. And crucially, it has to spotlight key known issues like immunogenicity and that product variability we mentioned.
Right, immunogenicity. We'll come back to that.
Exactly. The strategic play here is being proactive about those, known unknowns. And, just as important, it's a continuous thing. If the reference product's RMP changes, maybe new safety issues pop up your biosimilar safety profile, and its RMP must be updated immediately to reflect that. It's dynamic.
Okay, let's zero in on that term you mentioned, immunogenicity. It sounds pretty central here for listeners who maybe aren't deep in PV every day. What exactly is it, and why is it such a big strategic challenge for biosimilars?
Sure. Immunogenicity is essentially the patient's own body recognizing the biological medicine as something foreign.
Like an invader.
Kind of, yeah. And it mounts an immune response against it. This leads to the body creating something called anti-drug antibodies, or ADAs.
Okay.
Now, for a biosimilar, this is a top priority. Because that immune response, well, can seriously reduce how well the drug works, its efficacy, or worse, it could trigger some quite severe side effects.
Which means the whole PV strategy has to be super active, right? Not just sitting back and waiting for reports.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Active, not reactive.
Yeah.
The safety checklist really mandates prioritizing specialized testing and very rigorous post-marketing studies specifically designed to look for those anti-drug antibodies and any side effects linked to them. And the RMP itself needs to be really transparent about this. It has to clearly spell out all the risk mitigation steps and the monitoring strategies that are dedicated to tracking this specific critical factor throughout the product's entire life on the market.
Okay, so that deep understanding of risk within the RMP, that leads us straight to the next maybe massive operational hurdle, just making sure we know exactly which product caused a problem. When an adverse event happens, how do teams actually nail down that traceability?
Traceability. This is possibly the biggest day-to-day practical challenge for PV teams globally.
I can imagine.
Think about it. You have a market where two very similar products, the original reference biologic and the biosimilar, are both being used by patients.
Right.
If you can't definitively say, okay, this adverse event happened with product A, not product B, then the entire safety picture for both products gets completely muddied.
Which must be a huge threat to the biosimilars acceptance, right? And market stability.
Absolutely massive threat. It undermines confidence entirely.
So, what are the practical, tactical things teams are doing to enforce that separation when reports come in?
Well, the methods rely completely on unique identifiers.
Hmm.
Every single batch has to have its own distinct tracking elements. That could be a specific barcode, the brand name itself, or sometimes a designated suffix added to the non-proprietary name.
Like the US system, right? With the
Right.
four-letter suffix.
Exactly. That's a prime example. The U.S. requires that four-letter INN suffix, specifically to help distinguish between the reference product and its biosimilars during reporting.
You know, it's funny, that tiny four-letter suffix probably causes more PV headaches and requires more system updates than almost anything else.
It might seem small, but it's crucial.
And this is where technology really has to step up, right? To close that loop and make the tracking actually work across the whole healthcare system, it's not enough just to assign an identifier.
It absolutely isn't. Those unique identifiers, they need to be consistently and accurately updated everywhere. We're talking electronic health records, EHR systems, patient files, and most critically, in the actual adverse event AE reports themselves.
So the strategic move is leveraging digital tools then.
Oh, really?
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, we're seeing much more use of things like lot tracking apps, barcode scanning programs right there in pharmacies, and also within patient support programs.
Ah, okay.
The whole point is to make sure that when an AE report is generated, the digital data captured accurately and, unambiguously points to the specific product and ideally even the specific batch that was given to the patient. Getting that data capture right, that clean data,
Yeah.
is the absolute prerequisite for doing any kind of effective signal detection later on.
Right, that makes sense. Capturing clean data perfectly sets us up for the next strategic step you mentioned, using advanced technology for signal detection. PV teams are definitely moving beyond manually sifting through piles of reports, aren't they?
Oh, they absolutely have to. The sheer scale and the complexity of the data, especially with biologics, it just demands more advanced signal detection techniques.
So strategically, what does that mean?
Strategically, it means breaking down those traditional silos and integrating really diverse data sources. We're talking patient registries, real-world data pulled from EHRs, even patient-reported outcomes, or PROs, bringing it all together.
Wow, that sounds like an overwhelming amount of raw data, though. How does technology actually turn all that, noise into something useful, actionable intelligence?
Yeah, that's where AI and machine learning tools are becoming genuinely transformative.
Yeah.
For instance, there are specific tools out there, like PV Lens is one example, that are being deployed to really improve how companies assess risk and process signals, often using near real-time inputs. But for that data to be useful globally, it has to speak a common language.
Ah, okay. So for listeners maybe not in the PV weeds every day, can you quickly explain what MedDR is and why standardizing data to it is so vital for a global biosimilar program?
Sure. MedDRA, that stands for the Medical Dictionary for Regulatory Activities.
Yeah.
It's essentially the international standardized medical language used for all regulatory communication.
The universal translator for safety data.
Kind of, yeah. So if you have an AI tool churning through thousands of adverse event reports from all over the world written in different ways, mapping that messy, unstructured, real-time data accurately to the standardized MedDRA terms, that's how an organization ensures its findings are consistent, compliant, and understandable globally. It's critical.
And what about keeping that data clean? If you're comparing a new biosimilar against, say, decades of history for the original reference product, you must get a lot of irrelevant noise in there.
You certainly do, and that's precisely why targeted algorithms become essential. For example, some systems use tools. Vigimatch is one name you might hear, specifically designed to maintain data integrity
How does it do that?
by intelligently identifying and essentially filtering out outdated or irrelevant safety reports.
Yeah.
especially those older reports that are only tied to the reference product from years ago.
Right.
This helps reduce the signal noise that might otherwise falsely flag an issue with the biosimilar.
Makes sense. And since these biosimilars are almost always global products, that data integration, that signal detection, it has to work across borders.
It's completely non-negotiable. To get a truly global picture for signal detection, PV teams have to tap into the major international databases. We're talking about the EU's e-Vigilance system
Mm.
and the WHO's Vigibase. Using these huge international hubs gives you a much, much broader and more precise view of potential safety issues across different patient populations and regions than any single company could ever hope to achieve on its own.
Okay, so now we've got clean, standardized, processed data, hopefully from around the world. But all of this has to function within this, well, frankly, dizzying and complex web of international rules and regulations. Which brings us nicely to global regulatory compliance and operational efficiency.
Yes, achieving global PV success demands a highly adaptive strategy. It needs to be perfectly tuned to where the product is in its life cycle and critically tailored to all the different jurisdictions where it's being sold.
So PV networks have to constantly keep tabs on requirements from everyone.
Everyone, FDA, EMA, WHO,
Hmm.
and then all the key regional bodies like India's CDSCO, for example. You have to stay current.
What's the European Medicines Agency, the EMA? What are they really focusing on right now in this biosimilar context?
Well, their current emphasis is really on increasing the reliance on real-world safety data collected after the product is on the market.
Okay.
They're also pushing for standardized PSUR templates. Those are the periodic safety update reports. And they're continuously refining their risk-benefit frameworks. These aren't small tweaks. They often require PV teams to fundamentally restructure how they collect and report data.
And this must be where those regional differences, the local nuances, can really make or break an otherwise smooth global PV strategy.
Absolutely. Think about regulatory grade reporting nuance, especially in key emerging markets. Let's take India again. India requires companies to submit PSURs every 6 months for the first 2 years after a biosimilar gets approved.
Every 6 months. Wow.
Yeah, that's significantly more frequent than the standard annual cycle, or sometimes even more relaxed schedules you see in many other major markets like the US or EU.
So how does a PV team even staff or a plan for a requirement like India's specific PSUR timeline when, the rest of their global operations might be running on a less frequent schedule? How do you manage that mismatch?
That is the strategic operational challenge right there. It means you simply can't rely on a single, centralized global system running on, say, an annual clock.
Wow.
It won't work.
Oh.
You need tailored local expertise.
Yeah.
You need partners on the ground who understand the specifics and can ensure not just compliance, but also that robust data is flowing correctly.
Right.
It's about harmonizing those big international standards with the crucial regional frameworks, like India's CDSCO requirements and its national PV program, PVPI. It just demands that local nuance and a ton of adaptability.
So faced with all this, the global complexity, the regional demands, the frequent reporting, how are organizations actually handling this enormous administrative load efficiently, without their costs just skyrocketing?
Yeah. The only viable solution really lies in aggressive process automation and efficiency initiatives.
Makes sense.
The core strategy is to intelligently combine safety database information directly from different parts of the organization.
Yeah.
Manufacturing, quality control, regulatory affairs. Get them talking digitally.
Right.
By automating tasks like routine case processing, sifting through scientific literature for safety signals, generating standard reports. By automating those, organizations can dramatically streamline things like internal audits, significantly reduce human error rates, and ultimately control those potentially massive operational costs that come with running a compliant global PV system.
Okay, that focus on efficiency and automation transitions us perfectly into our final strategic pillar: stakeholder engagement and cross-functional links. Because all the automation in the world won't solve safety issues if the people actually involved, doctors, patients, pharmacists, aren't properly engaged, right?
That's absolutely critical. Safety is never just a regulatory department's job stuck in a silo. A key item on that strategic checklist has to be rigorous, ongoing training for healthcare professionals, HCPs.
Training them on what specifically?
Training them to accurately use those unique product identifiers, the batch numbers, the suffixes, when they report adverse events.
Yeah.
Get the traceability right at the source. And moreover, especially maybe in more resource-limited settings where reporting systems might be less developed, actively encouraging patients to report issues is essential. You have to proactively counter the very real risk of underreporting.
And thinking about key markets, for Companies aiming for the really critical EU market, there's a specific, very important strategic governance role required, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
For any biosimilar marketed in the EU, the company is legally required to appoint a qualified person responsible for pharmacovigilance or QPPV.
And that's not just a title.
Oh, definitely not just an administrative title. The QPPV is the designated strategic guardian of PV compliance for the EU. This person must have deep, demonstrable knowledge of all PD processes. They need to ensure adherence to good manufacturing practice standards, and they have to maintain that oversight literally 24/7. It ensures there's a single, dedicated, authoritative point person for compliance.
We also saw a really powerful strategic insight in the materials about linking pharmacovigilance, not just across regulatory or quality, but also linking it to device monitoring. Why is that distinction, drug issue versus device issue, why is that so strategically important in the biosimilar world?
It's highly relevant, actually, because so many biosimilars, particularly things like monoclonal antibodies, are frequently delivered using specialized systems. Think of complex autoinjectors or pre-filled syringes.
Right, the delivery device itself?
Exactly. So if a patient reports an adverse event after using one of these, the PV team has to strategically figure out, was this a problem with the drug itself?
Hmm.
Maybe that immunogenicity reaction we talked about
Okay.
earlier.
Okay.
Or was it actually a malfunction or a usability issue with the delivery device? Maybe the injector didn't work right or the patient couldn't use it correctly.
I see. So you need different expertise.
Precisely. This demands a true cross-functional link, a bridge between the drug safety team, PV, and the device safety or vigilance teams. Companies often need to leverage national initiatives like India's Material Vigilance Program, which specifically tracks device issues to maintain that comprehensive patient oversight across both drug and device.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What does this all mean for the strategic PV team leader today? Summarizing this pretty comprehensive checklist, it really sounds like it demands this incredibly coordinated effort, right? Combining digital innovation, super localized regulatory adherence, and really deep cross-functional collaboration.
That's a great summary. The strategic approach absolutely recognizes that biosimilar PV is incredibly granular, very detailed. Success really hinges on ensuring that traceability right down to the naming conventions.
Yeah.
Recognizing those subtle but crucial jurisdictional differences in naming, like the EMA model versus the FDA's four-character suffix approach we discussed,
Yeah.
and enforcing absolute precision in labeling and reporting across every single system and report.
And fundamentally, this entire strategic structure, everything we've talked about, it's all underpinned by those key global regulatory guidelines that really drive best practices everywhere.
Absolutely. Every single step we've discussed, from crafting that unique RMP to how you handle PSURs to signal detection at all, must align with the core principles in the EMA's GVP guidelines, the frameworks from ICH and the FDA, the WHO's specific guidance on evaluating biosimilars, and of course those important regional rules like India's guidelines on similar biologics. Achieving global PV success truly demands that local nuance and an unwavering commitment to adaptability.
Which leads us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over as you think about where this field is heading. We've firmly established that traceability is absolutely key, and right now it often relies on unique identifiers tied to specific manufacturing batches. Now, if AI tools are getting so powerful, rapidly accelerating signal detection across these massive international data sets, how might the industry move beyond simple, potentially error-prone batch numbers? Could we envision a fully standardized, maybe even immutable global identification system, one that accounts for product variability right from the moment of manufacturing all the way through to patient administration?
That's a fascinating challenge, isn't it? It really requires looking beyond today's regulatory structures, maybe towards truly global digitalization, and perhaps even technologies like blockchain for immutable tracking. Something to think about.
Indeed, lots to think about. We really hope this deep dive has given you some actionable strategic approaches for navigating the complexities of biosimilar safety and adapting your own PV strategy moving forward. Thanks so much for tuning in.